And we're live, folks. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, this is Be the Bank, the FIXnotes Mortgage Notes show. We tune in every week on YouTube. It's a Wednesday show to learn everything there is to know about the secondary mortgage market. I'm very excited for today's show because we're kind of experiencing some growing pains. As you can see, this is a different live shot. My DSLR is not connecting properly right now. I had some very exciting a whole new setup we're working on, and for some reason it worked in testing and practice, and then as soon as I got to go live here, it just shut down on me. So next week we have a couple more components coming that are going to really make the show come together, hopefully, fingers crossed. But in any case, let's get right into it. Let's start the presentation, and here we go. All right, so as you can see right off the bat here, we have this extra view with this new toy. This is a A10 mini video switcher. So hopefully, and once I have the right wire for the DSLR, we'll be able to really make this switcher come alive. And while I'm at it, let me make sure to put the software control on so that we can reduce the levels here. All right, bring the music down. Okay, so let's get right into the show. This week we're going to, for episode 10, double digits finally, get a little bit of the previous content from episode 9 to the mic. We had some audio issues. I've got a new lapel mic here, so I hope you can hear me loud and clear. So we're gonna go through the case studies from last week, some of the content from last week with a bunch of new stuff. So I actually do have some additional slides. It's not the same exact presentation, but if you watched last week's episode and had trouble understanding what I was saying, because once again, technical difficulties, the audio is a little crunchy. This week we're gonna resolve those errors. But before we get into it, a little bit of housekeeping. I wanna thank the 8 new non-disclosure signups. Let's see, all 8 of them have signed the non-disclosure agreement and now have access to the inventory of mortgage notes for sale available on FIXnotes.com/buy. So thank you so much, Patrick, Kranthi, Mark, David, Cassidy, Jacqueline, Scott, and Eric, for joining FIXnotes, signing the non-disclosure agreement. It's all 100% free. Now you guys are able to review mortgage notes for sale over at FIXnotes.com/buy. So to begin the show, we'll get right into the industry overview. But before we begin, just wanted to draw your attention, if you don't know already, FIXnotes.com/learn is an entirely free course that'll get you started into this industry. It's a bunch of different modules ranging from everything from acquisitions and due diligence to exit strategies, dispositions and sales, everything you need to know to get started. So go over to FIXnotes.com/learn for the free course. And now, of course, the industry overview. As always, we start with the news. What is the news this week? Well, of course, you can find out on FIXnotes.com/news. This is an industry news aggregator that we've put together. And this will give you a whole bunch of headlines, and then you can click through to the source articles to learn about what's going on in the market. We have a couple of points to mention this week, some important things to understand, some developments in the industry. But until we get there, let's talk about pricing real briefly. So market pricing in the third quarter hasn't changed much yet. I've been saying this for the last 4 episodes, I think now. But in general, performing loans are priced based on yield. Non-performing loans are based as a percentage, a discount to unpaid principal balance or fair market value. In senior liens, we price based on fair market value because first position loans are much more likely to resolve through a foreclosure event, through some real estate transaction, whereas second liens are more often resolved through the borrower. So those are priced based on the unpaid principal balance. And you'll see that over here on the left side, fair market value for senior, UPB for junior. And then when you price out a performing loan, they are valued based on yield. So these are percentages of yield. Typically in senior position loans, you're going to get between 7.5 to 12.5% cash on cash returns. In junior liens, your yields are a little stronger. They're more higher yields when you're being compensated for the risk buying a second position loan. But as you guys know, I prefer second liens, and there's many reasons why. We can get into that. Actually, we've talked about that in some previous episodes. If you go back to the episode titled First versus Second Liens, you can learn a little bit more about that. But in general, you get higher yields when you buy second liens because they are inherently riskier due to the fact that you are not the first one to get paid. The first lien is right behind the property taxes, and in some states, right behind the homeowners association. So this is a high-level overview of the pricing, and you're welcome to ask any questions about this. We normally touch on this every week, so we can really drill in if you guys are confused or need a little bit of additional insight there. But to bring it to the news of the week, I talked about this last week, and I've heard this now from our attorney as well as some people on Facebook have been really hashing out this warning to Pennsylvania loan investors. Self-servicing in Pennsylvania is a big no-no. It's going to get you in trouble if you file for foreclosure. So in Pennsylvania, there is no such thing as a debt buyer's license. In Pennsylvania, there's a servicing license, which is required when you go through the foreclosure process. So it looks like the Department of, what department is it in Pennsylvania? The department, did they even tell us? Well, in any case, they're looking through the foreclosure docket to see the plaintiffs of the upcoming foreclosures and then searching those records to make sure that the plaintiff has a servicing license. So if you are intending on foreclosing in Pennsylvania, make sure you're working with your attorney and your servicer and have that licensing in place. Very important to understand. There's different laws in every state regarding debt buying licenses, servicing license, and origination licenses through the NMLS. So you need to really get with your attorney or company that will communicate those requirements to you on a state-by-state basis. So it's important to understand. I would focus on an initial geography to start to understand the process there and then expand out. And in most states, there is a limit where you can actually own a couple loans before you own the license or before you actually acquire a license in that state. And the reason being is because of seller financing. So if a homeowner wants to sell their house and they require a seller financing to get the deal across, they want to sell the loan, but they want to carry back a mortgage loan to give the buyer a little bit of extra help. In case they can't qualify for a mortgage on their own through a bank, the seller can finance and carry back that financing. Now, if you carry back financing, you are a lender. You are a debt buyer, a debt owner at that point. So in Pennsylvania, I believe the limit is 4 or 5 loans that you can own as a debt buyer before you have to start really thinking about these licenses. But what this latest news tells us is that foreclosing in Pennsylvania without the license is a big problem. And there's actually a $10,000 per loan fine per event if you get hit with this. So be very careful in Pennsylvania with your self-servicing. And another industry news, I want to tell you guys about a virtual event that's coming up. So I believe it was episode 8, perhaps. We talked about, and I gave you a screenshot from an IMN virtual event that happened a couple weeks ago, where it was actually on Wednesday. I was tuned in right before the show. I think it was episode 8. And hearing from 4 different industry participants about their experiences in the market, how COVID is affecting their businesses, and how they see this all developing into the future. And they've got another one of these virtual events coming up. So I just got this email from Sharda over at IMN. I don't think she'll have a problem at all with me advertising for their upcoming event. It is free for investors to attend. It costs money for service providers to attend. It might even be a couple $100. But as an investor, you can participate in this forum. There's a bunch of panels: state of the market, acquisitions, evaluations, technology innovations, default servicing, modifications workouts and negotiated recoveries, foreclosures, property rehabilitation, firsts versus seconds. We've already covered that on this show, and a lot of these other topics we talk about on a week-to-week basis. And then, of course, managing servicers, sub-servicers, asset managers, and note owner relationships. And that's really what we do as note investors. We're the quarterback between all these different vendors and different counterparties. So tune into the IMN virtual event. There's a link here, but if you just Google IMN event, you should be able to find the details. It's coming up on October 13th. And this we were just notified of this this past week. So you are just in time if you're watching this show over the course of August or September to get into that October event. You can register and get approved to join not only the event and the videos that they're publishing, but also some networking. They've created a pretty cool back office where you can meet other attendees and start to share contact information and get to know other players in the industry. The previous IMN event, I scrubbed through the attendees list and saw a bunch of the big players who are all attending, so I'm sure it'll be the same this time around. I would highly encourage you to sign up for that event. It's free as an investor. So let's get on to another industry news. We've got some more industry overview today, and this one is rest in peace, Zillow, see data sources. Well, what does that mean? Well, in the past, I've really enjoyed the Zillow feature of going to the very bottom when you see this see more facts and figures, is that how you say that? You click see more facts and figures and it opens up this other screen and you can see all sorts of other details. At the very bottom, down here where it says, you know, to minimize this section, I'm going to put a little red box around that. There was a link that said show data sources or see data sources. You'd click that and there'd be a pop-up that had all of the different places where this data was being aggregated from. One of them in most properties being the county records. So then there'd be this pop-up, I'd scroll up to the top and click county records and would actually link you from Zillow's property page directly to the county, linked by the APN number, so that a really great place to start your research. Zillow is always great because you can see comps, there's a lot of data points there, but I liked going that additional level, going a little bit deeper to directly to the county records through the link, and that's gone now. So RIP Zillow see data sources. I'll let you know if that comes back, but I was just doing some due diligence the other day and it was missing and it was sort of a bummer. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You can still go to the county records directly, and this page will have the APN number, so you can search by the parcel number or the address through the county record directly in most counties. But it was just a shame that we lost that little tidbit feature with whatever update Zillow has done in the recent months. All right, so industry overview. This is a nice slide that we talk about on a weekly basis. The non-performing waterfall evaluation. This is the high-level flow that you go through as a due diligence, as a note investor going through their due diligence process. So at first, we're researching whether it's secured or unsecured, and then we're going to the next phase. If it's secured, well, is it a first position loan or a second position loan? And then in both first and second liens, we're looking at equity, bankruptcy, and occupancy. And then at the bottom of the flow here, we're looking between first and seconds at taxes and title in first position loans, and in first lien status and equity when looking at second position loans. So there's a little bit of a decision tree at the end there, but at a high level, the due diligence for first and the second liens do correspond and overlap quite a bit, especially at the top. And that's secured versus unsecured. That's the first thing we're going to talk about today, because secured and unsecured is the biggest driver of pricing that there is when you're valuing a mortgage note. And to start this little discovery process on secured versus unsecured, and you'll know this by the title, we're talking about DataTree. I think that was the title. Yeah, DataTree is a great way to research secured and unsecured. So here's a case study we did, I think in week 4. This is a week 4 case study that was an unsecured loan. So I'm pulling this up again to show you the little bit of research we did right off the bat to understand where this loan really, what happened, where it went wrong, why is it unsecured and therefore worth about a penny, 1% of the UPB, versus as a secured loan up to 50% of the balance or more. So this loan, and it was actually a payoff as an unsecured loan, believe it or not, but when we pull up the DataTree report, this is the report that you'll see for free, if you're a DataTree user and you search an address, you get all this data without having to pay any additional. I like this model very much because you do pay a monthly minimum, and then that minimum is used to spend on other reports. And if I pop this, oh, sorry, let me go back one. If you pop open on this side, you'll get a lot of opportunity to download other documents and actually pay for some reports. But to get into this initial page, that's totally free. And it's really cool that you can search as many properties as you want through DataTree using this tool. Now, I did highlight that, and you guys saw a sneak preview there. FHLM is the owner. Now, that is not the name of the borrower who was on the data tape that we were reviewing for our due diligence process. The data tape is the spreadsheet that you would look at to have all of the asset details that you're using to analyze that loan for sale, price it out, and then acquire it, and give your best guess as to what's going to happen in the next phase. Well, when you look at that, the DataTree report here, and see that the owner is FHLM, you know right away that this is not the secured loan you expected. There's a recent sale, and the owner does not match the borrower. Now, there are some caveats to mention here. Sometimes the owner is not the borrower here, but there may be a quitclaim deed that transfers ownership, a deed that does not wipe out the lien that you are looking at purchasing. So this is not the end-all be-all for unsecured versus secured. However, anything that flags as wrong property owner here needs to be addressed in a little bit further research by going to the county record and seeing in the property deeds what kind of deed was transferred. Was it a foreclosure deed that wiped out the other liens, which the lien you're analyzing being one of them, the subject mortgage, or was this a non-foreclosure transfer like a quitclaim deed that did not change the ownership? In this case, FHLM, I think this is a federal home loan mortgage. I don't know what this exactly stands for, but I know that this is a foreclosure event. This company acquired the property because of outstanding taxes. So in this case, it's unsecured. Now, if we go over here and click Property Data Reports, we'll see that there's a lot of opportunity to research a little bit more. Now, I like to use this tool because it's super easy to use, but I don't like it because a lot of this data can be researched for free. If this county, and this one's Pitt County, is online, you can go to Pitt County and you can basically do all of these reports yourself. For example, an open lien report, that's created by looking at the public records based on the APN number, which we've redacted here, but that APN number is related to mortgages, deeds, assignments, satisfactions, subordination agreements, all sorts of publicly filed documents that if you click this over here, open lien report, you'll get all that data. But if you just research it yourself, you're not spending, I think, $10 on this report, and you can get a little bit more familiar with how different counties present their data online. So I would recommend, before you go through this process, to look at the county website, see what information you can find. Now, right on this summary screen, it shows document images. Now, this I found not to be entirely accurate, and we're actually going to pull up this DataTree TotalView report because the TotalView report has a lot, if not all of the data from the open lien report, plus more information for the same price. So I'd highly recommend to use the TotalView report. And this should show us the document images from 2012 to 2020. And I guess that makes sense because the document images that we're missing here are prior to 2012. But let's get into it. We're done with this case study from episode 4, and let's move on to the actual DataTree TotalView report. So this is, and I think I have an option now with this computer to make myself a little bigger, and let's do this. Hey, that's cool. Okay, so as you can see, this is also Pitt County, Grimesland, North Carolina. This is the same report that we were just looking at, but we've ordered the TotalView. So this is the $10 or so report that you get if you go to the next step. So let's look at the first page and scroll down and see the subsequent pages and show you what you get from the TotalView report and how you can use that information to further your due diligence process. So We first see the owner name. We already found that out, FHLM. That was on the initial scrub, the initial dashboard. We also have a value range, and I didn't show you that, but that was also, I'm going to go back and show you. So over here, you see that value, 243,000. So this just gives us, once we get to the next page, it just gives us a little bit more of a range. So we're seeing 238 to 284. So that's the high level range that the AVM, the automated valuation model that TotalView uses to estimate the proper value. Next, we have the property description, which is redacted just to be confidential here for the borrower. And then we keep scrolling. It went to FHLM, property details. Now, public records are very interesting, but in this case, you see they're kind of blank. And that's where I was showing you the 2012 data was supposed to be available. This lien that we're looking at was originated before then, so we actually see no prior loan history. Now, because this loan is unsecured and it was foreclosed out by the taxes, we would see nothing here in open lien's current owner because FHLM does not have a loan on this property. They own it free and clear. However, if we went back to actually prior loan history, current owner, all of these should be blank. So this is actually lining up correctly because the current owner does not have any liens on the property. And don't worry, we're going to look at another TotalView report that has the additional information in these sections so you can see what it looks like. But let's go on to the next page. Here we have the transfers and conveyances, the deed transfer, the ownership history, and then a little bit of listing history, which is interesting to see because you can get this on Zillow as well. And typically I like to get this information from Zillow because you can also look at comps in a little bit more of a detailed oriented way. But this does give us a high level that they're trying to sell it for $245 in 2017. They withdrew the listing on the MLS, and then in 2019 they tried to list it again for $5,000 more, $250,000, canceled it again on the same day. That doesn't make much sense. And then they put out a new listing just recently, and it was sold. And it wasn't sold or anywhere close to $265. It came in at $131,600, which wiped out any equity there was in the property anyway. So if we go to the next page, we'll see a little bit about the overall market. Now, these are nice charts. I think they look cool. They're fun to see, you know, colors and graphs. And honestly, though, I don't really put much stock in this. This isn't my primary method of valuing the property. It's nice to see the trends and, you know, arrows pointing upwards looks like a good sign. But what I like to look at is the comps. And to be honest, the comps here are useful, but generally I'm going to get more detail going directly to Zillow. Because in Zillow, you can look at the market, you can click the little yellow button for the sold listings, and you can see all of the details, the square footage, the lot sizes, beds and baths. You can see everything you need to in order to compare if a comp is actually comparable, and then if not, adjust the pricing to fit, basically to fit what the subject property is. If it's a smaller lot, then you're going to discount a little bit. If it's a bigger lot, then you're obviously going to increase the value. And I think that that's the last of this DataTree report. But let's go to another TotalView report in just a minute. First, we got to talk about the high-level tech overview. And this is one of my favorite slides in the presentation because it shows how this business is so flexible. You can run this note business with a capable PC or Mac, a decent smartphone, and a fast internet connection from anywhere in the world. It's pretty amazing that with these tools, web services, and software, you're able to put together a really efficient machine in this business to automate a lot of the processes and to take some of that repetitive tasks out of your life and into the hands of a computer, which honestly do a lot better job than humans do most of the time. So just at a high level, and you're welcome to ask any questions about some of these specific services, or specific softwares, but we actually go through at least one of these every single week. So go back to the previous episodes if you want to learn about, for example, Podio or Globoflow. We talked about Zapier and CoreLogic. We're talking about DataTree today. and specifically the total view report. You already know that. We're already looking at a total view report. But I wanted to show you that slide just if you haven't tuned into the Be the Bank show in the past and you want to get the lay of the land, the high level overview of the technology, the hardware and the software that we put together to make this business work. You've got it there. All right, so let's look at another total view report. So this total view report, I really thought it was important to share because this report shows the open liens, this section here. So the open liens are important because this is going to tell us if our mortgage is on title and if there are any other mortgages on title. In this case, we're looking at buying a second position loan, and we want to make sure that the first position loan matches the information that we expect. Is it the right origination amount? Is it the right balance? Well, it's the same thing. The origination amount is the original loan balance. Is it the right origination date? Is it the right lender? Does this make sense? So we pull up the account, we see the APN number, the owner name, the mailing address. This is a really great point, a little pro tip for you. This mailing address is going to tell you whether or not the subject property, which we're researching, is occupied by the owner. Is it owner occupied? Or if this mailing address does not match the address up top, then we know it's non-owner occupied. Now there's still some additional research to do in order to determine whether or not it's occupied at all. We don't know who's occupying the subject property if this mailing address doesn't match, but we do know it's not the owner. So in that case, you would call it non-owner occupied and move on to a future research through skip tracing to determine who is living in that property. Is it a tenant? Is it vacant? What's going on? Property description, that's the legal description. It's no active foreclosure status, no listing data available. This is nice to see this, but to be honest, it's not 100% accurate. Nothing really is. You got to trust, but verify everything you see. So foreclosure status, it's good to see there's no foreclosure status here. And then we can see some market details. They bought the property back in January of 2008 for $324,000, which when we go down to the open liens, we can see that there was a 2008 lien. And if we go to the next page, we'll actually see the first position mortgage that was originated in 2008 when the property was first purchased. This is called a purchase money loan because the proceeds from these loans were used to actually buy the property. And then we see a first position loan on top of us. In front of the second position loan is a $247,000 Bank of America first lien. Trust deed, mortgage, a deed of trust and a mortgage are the same thing. It's called the security instrument. And as you guys know, every loan has 4 critical documents: the note, the mortgage, the assignment, and the allonge. The assignment transfers the mortgage or the deed of trust, which is also called the security instrument, and the allonge transfers the note. Very important to understand because the mortgage is a publicly recorded document, whereas the note is not publicly recorded. So the allonge, it's kind of like endorsing the back of a check. You're endorsing a promissory note to a new owner, or the seller is endorsing that to you as the buyer. And the assignment does the same thing, transferring that mortgage from one owner to the next owner, but the assignment is public record. And that's what you'll see down here. Bank of America transferred it to Federal National Mortgage Association, and then they transferred it to Nation Star Mortgage LLC, and those assignments happened in 2014 and then in 2019. That's very much standard practice. If you've ever gotten a mortgage yourself, you know that as soon as you get originated and close your deal, you buy your house, you'll get a notice in the mail like a month later that your loan has been sold. In my case, our loan was sold to Wells Fargo. So I now have to pay Wells Fargo instead of the originator that I was actually, thought I was doing business with. But because I'm knowledgeable about this industry, that came as no surprise to me. One other little pro tip for you home buyers out there: you're gonna get a lot of mail based on these public records with companies who are trying to sell you insurance and other home, it's very strange, but you'll see your information, your lender's information, all of your loan information on these documents that look very official. I must have gotten 12 or maybe even 15 of these marketing letters that look official, like they're from your lender, but it's actually selling you on like title insurance or something. So make sure you keep an eye out for that when you buy a house. Next is the second lien that we talked about, which was subordinated. I mentioned a subordination agreement as a publicly recorded document earlier in this episode. In this case, well, in any case, a subordination agreement transfers the lien position if a second lien was originated before the first lien. And you see we were originated in 2008. That's really all lien position is. Whoever was recorded first is in first position. But because, we'll see on the next page, because there was a 2008 first lien already for $259,000 that was released in 2012, that 2012 release became a refinance. They paid it down a little bit to $247,000, and then the second lien had to be subordinated to put it back in junior position. Now, very interesting, but there's sometimes surprises where a second lien ends up in first position and it's not subordinated. Sometimes this is a title claim where you go to the company that originally underwrote the loan and the title company that was involved in that process, and they will sometimes have to pay off a second lien because they messed up and it wasn't subordinated. And sometimes those arrangements happen in different ways. You can get a payoff from the first lien to subordinate, or you can resolve it in another amicable way. But in this case, and in most subordinated second liens, it's part of the refinance. And at the end of the day, as a junior lien holder, you wouldn't want to hold up the subordination process if a borrower is getting a refinance, because typically they're refining for a lower rate, for lower monthly payments, to free up more money, more savings for the second position loan. So you don't want to stand in the way of a subordination, but sometimes if it's messed up from years back and you acquire that, you kind of inherit that position, you're in a good spot, and it sometimes can be an easy payoff. So as we saw on that next page, the original first mortgage was released and then it was refinanced. The release is what's called a satisfaction of mortgage, and that basically nullifies the original security instrument. This debt is no more. It's been released. We see some transfers and conveyances, the ownership history, and blocking out who is transferring and acquiring these just for confidentiality. But we can see that the property has increased in value from $315 back in 2005 to $324 in 2008. And now we know that the property is, oops, oh, sorry guys. I went a little too far back, and now I've got to wait for the animation real quick. Let's enjoy. If you guys missed this slide already, you get a little bit of a reprise here. All right, DataTree TotalView. Yes, on to the next slide. I wanted to show you the first page again of this because we see the value range has already went up to 367 to 605. Pretty big range, kind of useless to have such a large range. But in any case, it does look like the property has appreciated in value since those previous transactions. Next, we have tax status. A really great section when it's functional. When it's not, you really need to go to the county records, to the assessor or the sheriff, if the sheriff is processing tax foreclosures in that area, to make sure that the home is not in a delinquent tax situation. In this case, we're status unknown, so you really don't get enough of an insight on this one. And finally, over to the comps, we get some detail on all of the different properties that are selling in that area and how they stack up against our property. Once again, though, I would recommend going to Zillow to capture a lot of this information. All right, more comps, and then, of course, the market overview, those fun charts and lines and graphs, which give you some confidence. But, like I said, not always the best thing to research. Let me try something real quick in between our next slide. We've got a little bird out there, finally, and there it goes. Finally, we have added the bird watching angle back into our show. But we'll promise, guys, I've got some really great ideas with this camera, which we did not get working. And I just had an opportunity, if the camera was working, to show you guys a, what was that? A little, what kind of bird was that? It's blanking my mind. But we got to get back to the show because there's a lot more mortgage note content to get into. Assets for sale is this next section, and I wanted to show you, and I'm going to probably pull myself out of here and show you the quick high-level process on how to become a FIXnotes vetted buyer. You click Buy Notes, you click Sign NDA for access, you'll be given this short list. This is actually happening in real time. I didn't speed this up at all. It's super easy to go through. You do have to answer a bunch of questions. For example, you have to give your address. And I understand that an address is something that is a bit confidential, a bit important to you, but this borrower information that we're giving you access to is also very confidential, very important. So to sign a non-disclosure agreement effectively, it needs to have an address on it. So you'll need to provide your address to generate the non-disclosure agreement. And once you're done with that, you get a couple quick questions about your preferences. You want to buy non-performing loans, performing loans, junior loans, senior loans. This is a multi-pick list, so pick as many as apply. And then high level, are you looking for performing, minimum work or maximum yields? Do you buy nationwide or in a specific area? And then you can do that at FIXnotes.com/buy. Other details is just so you can add some additional insight. If we've spoke on the phone or something, you want to remind me of that, you can do it there. So I'm going to refresh my screen here a couple times, but it's not going to go for about a minute. But then you get an email. You'll get 2 emails right off the bat. One is with your login details, so you can go over to the website and see the assets for sale. And then you'll also get an email with the non-disclosure agreement to sign. So you click that and it'll pull up Right Signature. Right Signature will give you a really, really easy to use process to click through, read the agreement, sign it if you agree. It's pretty standard in this business. You have to sign a non-disclosure agreement before you're being provided confidential borrower information. It makes sense. We want to protect the borrowers and all of their confidential information is necessary to you as a note buyer in your due diligence process. So you do have a permissible use to use that information to review it, but you need to sign a non-disclosure agreement to promise that you will treat that information with utmost care. After you sign the NDA, you'll get 2 more emails. You'll get the confirmation of the non-disclosure agreement being executed. You can click that and you can download the file if you want to put it in your records. And then you'll get 1 more email. Your membership at FIXnotes has been changed. And this last email will turn your account from, I think I have a little video here. It'll turn your account from course access, if you are just reviewing the Learn Notes course, to course and inventory access. So if you are successful, you'll click on My Account and you'll see this, course plus inventory access. Now don't change your membership level or something. One of our users did that this week and I had to fix it, which is no big deal. Email me if you have any problem. And then you'll get this separate page. This is the same link, FIXnotes.com/buy. But this time around, you'll be given full access to all of the data. So let's get into the case studies. That was just a high level on how to see our current inventory for sale. We've got, I think, 5 or 6 loans available right now. So the inventory is a little small, but we should have some more assets on the market by next week. So stay tuned for the next opportunity to acquire some more mortgage notes. So, case study number 1, and we did go over this case study last week, but the audio had some issues, so I want to talk about it again because you know what's more important than learning about people's success? It's learning about failures. And this is a tax wipe. This is a failure, entirely my fault as a portfolio manager, to protect our lien for a small amount of taxes, as you'll see. So this property is worth about $33,000. Plenty of value there, protecting our UPB of only $7,000. And there was only $450 of taxes, and we didn't pay them, and we lost $32,000 of equity on this deal. So this is important. This is an important case study for you to understand because it can happen very easily if you're not monitoring your taxes when buying, first position liens. All right, so the first document that we received in the mail when we first acquired the loan, and make sure you record your assignment of mortgage so that they know where to send these documents so you're aware of what's going on. But it was this tax sale certificate. You'll see the original amount of unpaid balance was $266.29 of outstanding taxes, and the certificate was available for sale for $450. So somebody went to the auction and they purchased this, and by purchasing this, you're buying an option to acquire this property. If nobody pays you off, then you can apply for a deed and then actually get the property. So as you'll see, the next document that came through was a notice of tax sale and a right to redeem. So this one was telling us that the petition has been filed and you have until this date for the tax deed to be issued. And back in February, this was sold, the certificate was sold, and you better do something about it. So as a lender, you see this and you're like, all right, well, it seems like the borrower is probably going to pay this, right? It's not that much money, and you know, they got to pay their property taxes or they'll lose their home. So that was what was assumed here, that the borrower would pay these taxes. But they didn't, and we get another filing. Notice of filing verified petition for issuance of tax deed. So the next step in the process, and I can't say that we weren't properly notified because we got a lot of notices here. And then finally, the straw that broke the camel's back, the order for issuance of tax deed. So what this does is therefore ordered, adjudged, and decreed that once the certificate of sale and a copy of this order, the tax deed is going to be transferred to the new owner. So that was a bummer because we lost out on a whole bunch of equity here. We actually had a $7,000 balance, but there's plenty of equity above that that could have been captured as part of a, I mean, in this case, it would have been an uncontested foreclosure because the borrower was deceased. So that's the big caveat here. As a first lien holder, you need to be monitoring the taxes. You need to be making sure that your lien position is not wiped by a potential tax situation like this. And if the borrower is deceased, you need to be a lot more on the ball because that borrower is no longer looking out for the property as you might have expected. Now, this is one reason why I really like second liens, because when you buy second liens, the first position mortgage is the first line of defense, kind of avoiding situations like this by paying off the taxes when necessary. Or in most cases, they escrow the taxes, which means they hold a balance. Every time a monthly mortgage payment is made, they hold a little bit aside so they can pay off the taxes when the time comes. But in this case, we received a notice of the tax sale. We didn't pay it prior to the notice of issuance of the tax deed. And then because of that deceased borrower, it was a lot more hands-on than anticipated. And we messed up. We're unsecured and wiped. There's no collection potential on this loan. It's a write-off. In this case, we lost. And there was plenty of potential for this account to result in as much as a $30,000 property sale. But due to my failure, I will take responsibility for this one and pay off the taxes prior to the issuance of the tax deed. We were not able to come to that positive resolution. So the lesson here, when you have a deceased borrower, especially in first position loans, you want to make sure that those taxes are being monitored. And when you get notices like that, you address them. Even if it's a tiny amount, like on a relatively tiny amount, like $450, you can't assume that the borrower is going to pay that off. You need to pay it off as the lender to protect your interest. So this one was a zero big fat goose egg payoff. We lost out entirely on this. And I do want to mention, and after I've taken all the responsibility for this, let me back up and make a quick excuse. But this is a kind of an example of triage. And we talked about triage in week 8, I believe. It's a medical term meant to define the order of priority. The most important cases you have to address first, the most critical conditions you need to resolve, and then you move on to the next condition, the next issue, the next fire to put out. In this case, a $7,000 UPB was relatively low compared to some of the other accounts in the portfolio with $250,000, $300,000 plus balances. This loan slipped through the cracks. It was lower in the priority list, and we missed it. And those taxes weren't paid off as they should have been. So this case, we got wiped. Now we're going to talk about one more case study from an investor loan sale. So I like to talk about loan sales because this is a case study that's repeatable. It's something that you can understand as a buyer when you're looking at pricing and analyzing loans for sale. So in this case, we had a $688,000 property with a $305,000 first position loan and then equity of $382,000. So the fair market value minus the senior is $382,000, protecting our $110,000 unpaid principal balance. So this was a loan that originated in 2009. It was a purchase money loan, and my client acquired it in 2019. It was a second lien secured by a single family home. And the Senior is current with minimal outbound collection campaign pursued. We did offer the borrower a small discount to the for a discounted payoff, a DPO, but the borrower did not respond to that letter. We also offered an $8,000 down payment in the same letter. It was just one letter we sent out that said, here's a couple options to resolve the debt. But because of the amount of equity in this deal, there really wasn't much of a discount that we could offer. I think we ended up offering like a $100,000 payoff for their $110,000 balance. They could have reached out and tried to negotiate at least, but we heard nothing back from them. So the next step would have been to file a demand letter, get an attorney involved to start pursuing that foreclosure process. But because my client was more focused on a velocity model, which means they were looking to flip that loan, put that capital back to work to buy more loans, it didn't make sense for them to go through a lengthy foreclosure process. It made more sense to sell to an investor who would take on that more intensive resolution process on their own. So it was sold just in the end of July as part of a package deal. And this account was in Pennsylvania, so pricing was discounted a little bit as a judicial state. A judicial foreclosure state takes longer to foreclose, and they're priced typically lower than you'd see in non-judicial states like Texas and Arizona, where foreclosures are very quick. And there was such a substantial amount of equity in this property that there's some flexibility here. If the borrower does not come to the table to negotiate a modification or a discounted payoff, a foreclosure is a no-brainer here because there's so much equity. The borrower is definitely going to get that wake-up call and come to the table to resolve something. Because the senior is current, we know the borrower wants to stay in this home. There's some pretty strong idea of the intention of the borrower when we see a current senior lien. So this is just another notice on that Pennsylvania self-servicing warning. If you were to foreclose on this loan, you want to make sure that you're totally buttoned up and working with a licensed servicer and a licensed attorney. And in this case, we sold it for $44,000. That's 40% of the balance. And that leaves plenty of meat on the bone for the investor who purchased this loan. And it could have, and this is kind of in hindsight, what we could have done here, we may have been able to offer the borrower a lower discounted payoff. We maybe could have given them more of a discount and maybe closed this deal for 60 grand instead of 44 on that $110,000 balance. That's an idea, but in general, since our company is not in the intensive collection process, my clients like to use that velocity model. It didn't make sense to go through the foreclosure and really push the resolution angle. So when we didn't get any response to that first letter, it made sense to move on and sell the deal. That's it for the case studies today, guys. I think we've got, all that's left is giveaways. So we're doing this 15-minute consultation. We haven't done many of these lately because we haven't had many comments, to be honest. But if you want to qualify for a 15-minute consultation, all you got to do is subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment with a topic or a question or something you want to discuss on the consultation call. I'll pick one of those comments that I think is most engaging, most interesting, and we'll do a Zoom call. You can send your details to me in that same form at FIXnotes.com/buy. That'll give me your contact information so I can reach out directly. YouTube, you can't really do it through YouTube, so it is what it is there. But that'll be the best channel to get into my database so that we can communicate. FIXnotes.com/buy. And then I'd love to get on some more consultation calls. And maybe, just maybe, because of this little device here, we'll be able to do some live Zoom calls in the future with investor interviews or some fun stuff like that. I think that's it, guys. Let's take a look at the camera here. We got nothing there. I really only have these two channels right now. I'm getting channel 1 hooked up with this DSLR behind me. That'll be next week when I have the cables in place. And then hopefully I'll have a 4th camera angle as well very soon for a surprise angle in the future. That's it for the show, guys. Let's just run through I think this is my ending shot. This is FIXnotes Be the Bank, the industry overview. Tech tips, vendor reviews, assets for sale, case studies, giveaways. That's Be the Bank every single Wednesday on YouTube. Please tune in. And I'm Robert Heitha from FIXnotes. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I apologize that once again, every single week we have some technical difficulty. I really hope to have everything buttoned up for next week to get to a point where we're in the flow of things here and we don't let the technology distract from the content, which is bringing you the best content on the secondary mortgage market every single Wednesday. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you want to learn next week. And one quick teaser for next week. I actually had an investor who I've sold a bunch of deals to reach out with 2 specific deals for case studies. Hey, Eric, thank you so much for the comment. Hey, by the way, if you leave comments in the live chat here, and I'll just say, thanks, Eric. If you leave comments in that live chat, they will not be below the video in the future. So in order to qualify for the consultation, leave a comment once the live video is published. So then I'll be able to see that in the future and we can reach out to you with a request to get on a consultation call. All right, thank you so much for joining us, guys. Let me know what you want to learn next time. And until then, have an awesome week and we'll see you then.